to really truly help people in that space, you have to get to the root of understanding people.
Welcome back to the Cutoffs Coffee podcast. We're your hosts, James and CT from T3 Performance. And today we have a heck of an episode with Natalie Sabin. Natalie is a national board certified health and wellness coach, and we talk all things nutrition. If you are having a hard time figuring out what works best for you, what works best for your athletes, for your kids, for your teams, if you want to try to figure out how to navigate nutrition in the world of either weight loss or sports performance, we cover all those things here in the next hour of the podcast with Natalie.
And this episode is brought to you by T3 Nutrition Coaching with Natalie. So if you are looking to lose fat or build muscle, have more energy, and feel better on a day-to-day basis, you can work with Natalie in a one-on-one basis with our T3 Performance Nutrition Coaching, right? We offer personalized one-on-one coaching to make sure that what you're doing, like what we talked about in this episode, is exactly what you need to be doing. And then you'll have that support along the way throughout the process of reaching those goals.
Get your notepad and your pen out and be ready for the next hour of nutrition advice. Again, we cover so many things. There is something in there for you, no matter if you are somebody who's very experienced and very well-rounded when it comes to your nutrition, or if you're just trying to start on your fitness and nutrition journey. We've got something for everybody. So enjoy episode 63. Here we go with Natalie Sabin. Natalie, after talking for about 20 minutes here before the show, we're finally recording. Happy to have you on. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here with you guys. Yeah, it was like a nice little pre-chat. So it was good.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. We love talking nutrition. And we're going to talk all things nutrition. But first, we want to know a little bit about you. So we're going to ask about, your story here shortly. But first, something for the listeners. What's something that we need to know about you that we can't find on a quick Google search?
Well, I don't think you can find much of anything on me on a Google search to begin with. So it's
We
probably like
tried. You
anything I
can't.
tell
Yeah.
you is going to be pretty new and maybe exciting, hopefully exciting. I think anything you would search, if you would find on me now, it would be more current, things that I'm doing. But most people probably wouldn't know that I'm originally from a super small town. I'm a country girl, middle of nowhere, grew up with a cow crossing on the way to school. Like late for school, you have to wait for the cow crossing. So my exposure to things was very minimal, very much bubbled. And I only graduated with about 140 kids. So what that meant was I could literally do every sport and every activity at the school because everybody needed somebody. So I did all kinds of things, soccer, pole vaulting, theater. When I ran hurdles, I played softball, just could do it all because not enough people to get around. So kind of did a little bit of everything. So jack of all trades, master of none. And then my career of sports pretty much ended at high school because about as far you can go.
We just had a conversation on the last podcast. You're telling me you didn't specialize at 9 years old?
No, yeah, that's
Bizarre.
so funny. I talk about that now with my kids. I explained to them, like, I didn't have to start at, gosh, my daughter actually was younger, 7 with soccer. I'm like, I could just walk in freshman year and be like, I want to play soccer. And we played soccer. And it was a lot of small town teams. So it's kind of the same with everybody. So.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell us a little more about that? So, into your now professional career, tell the people what you do, what you're passionate about.
Yeah. So I have what I feel like lived many different lifetimes and different paths along the way. Now I am in the nutrition space. I've always been in the health and fitness space. I would say it really started though in the health space from a respiratory therapy position. That's what I first did. So that side of things was more like you were already chronically sick. By the time you saw me, you were, COPD, you were having heart disease, you were, you know, having complications related to obesity. So we're talking more like just trying to get you to be in a place where you're alive and surviving. And that was something that kind of bothered me, because I just saw this whole gap between preventative medicine, right? And doing things earlier on to prevent getting to that point. So I kind of went like, you know, through the sales routes and things like that, a little bit more of a preventative focus. But then I found that nutrition is kind of at the core of a lot of things, right? You know, how we're fueling our body, how we're setting ourselves up from success all through the decades. And I really took an interest in that to help people be successful earlier, to maybe hopefully prevent them seeing a respiratory therapist later in their life.
So as you started getting into nutrition as, you know, your niche, your best way to help people prevent them from being in a cycle of chronic illness, what were some of the things that you originally had thought about nutrition, and then you ended up having like a paradigm shifting moment that you know, helped you become the health coach and nutrition coach that you are now?
Yeah. When, you know, you're learning all of this technical stuff, right? You're reading textbooks and you're reading research papers and you're learning the facts and the biochemistry and all the facts, right? All those things that you need to do to pass a test, right? It's great and all, but to really truly help people in that space, you have to get to the root of understanding people and conveying those facts to them in a way where it doesn't sound preachy. It doesn't sound like, oh, I know more than you do. This is what you need to do. But it really took me down the path of understanding the art of coaching and making that a strength, and really getting to the root of behavior and why people do the things they do and why they don't do the things that they want to do. And I think going down that path and understanding the coaching aspect of it has really made me the coach that I am now. And really starting with the person themselves, because they're always going to know themselves the best, and bringing out their good qualities to help them find their way through their roadblocks and the struggles that they're having with nutrition. So I would say the big shift is moving away just from the textbook and really understanding the person as a human.
And I kind of want to follow that question up. And this is something that we had a conversation maybe a couple of months ago about. But if we are looking up either nutrition information online, if we're talking to somebody that has a background in nutrition, just like the training space, there are USAW certifications. There's a CSCS. You have your undergraduate degrees. You could go get a master's. There's all these different things, and you know, if an athlete's coming to us to seek our help in that, they don't really know the education that comes behind any of those things I just listed off. Could you give us a overview of what is out there, and then your specialties and your accreditations in terms of coaching?
Yeah, for sure. Especially now, there's so many people out there with the title of coach, and that's not a negative to people that are coaches and identify themselves as a coaching career. But certainly there are these subsets within it, right? You could just be selling supplements and call yourself a coach. You could be a registered dietitian and going the coaching route. You can have a master's or a PhD in nutrition. There's also the National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach, which is a special accreditation that's over, it's like kind of the umbrella of it is the Medical Board of Examiners, the same people that run the test for physicians. So it's a very specific certification, a very specific set of testing questions, and you can only do it through them. And that is more down the path of how do you actually coach people? How do you have these conversations to draw the best out of them? So I find for myself, like that was the right route. So I have my master's in nutrition. but having that coaching aspect and that certification was super important to me. And I did that through the Mayo Clinic. So those two together kind of have created this hybrid version of who I am as a coach, having the factual textbook knowledge, but then also the understanding of people.
I think that's so interesting to be in, 10 minutes into a nutrition podcast and we have yet to talk about macronutrients or talk about food. I mean, there's so much more to it than just that. That's so cool. And I guess let's start here. So what most people see, right? You go on social media is an amazing thing, but also we all know the negatives of it. You'll see a ketogenic diet saved this person's life. You'll see a paleo diet was the best thing for this person. You'll see carnivore is the way to go. You'll see eat eggs. You'll see don't eat eggs. You'll see eat a ton of fruit. Then you'll see fruit is bad. There's all the sugar in fruit. Where do we even start? So somebody who is looking to begin their nutrition journey and they said, you know what? I'm going to go to episode 63 of the Cutoffs and Coffee podcast and listen to Natalie Sabin. And I want to know where to start. Where can people start with this?
Well, first, I'm going to say, of course, you want a coach to help you navigate all these things, right? But
Great point.
And all joking aside, it does help to kind of work with someone that can help you to quiet the noise and get to understand you and pull those things out. I do believe that there is more than one way to be successful with nutrition. I think that people tend to overcomplicate it. So my first thing is find something that feels very easy for you to do and to follow through with, because if it's complicated, no matter what it is, and if you don't like it, no matter what it is, you're not going to do it. You want to be mindful that you're doing something that's not going to harm your overall health, but most things that are out there, they're not going to do too much damage. Maybe the carnivore diet, we'll see in a few years where that heads. But find something that's simple that you can stick with consistently. Find a few experts that are truly experts. Like you were saying with like the credentialing, right? Make sure that the people that you are following are deep into the understanding of research, maybe even writing their own papers, and then kind of shut everything else down, keep the noise quiet, and stay focused on that path. It's really about the consistency. You can get there in so many ways. There's no one right way.
About how long? You talk about consistency, right? People want things immediately.
Oh yeah.
That's why things like Ozempic have taken off, and that's why pills and medicines have taken off. But how long when you're coaching, working with a new client, do you say, hey, do this for 3 months, do this for 6 months, do this for a year? What does that timeline look like for people to really be able to make a change?
So one thing that I will probably say more often in this podcast, but it's very true when it comes to nutrition, is it depends. It depends so much on that person and it depends on their goals. So let's take just general weight loss, because that's a popular one among adults. It takes as long as it's going to take. There's no like 8 weeks to fat loss, 16 weeks, 3 days, 75 days. It takes as long as it takes. And that really comes down to that consistency, right? People don't want to be dieting forever. And I don't want people to be dieting forever. That's not healthy. They want to get to a point where they're maintaining. But if we're kind of on a diet, off a diet, doing something part of the week, not really doing it the other part of the week, it extends how long that's going to take. Strictly talking from a numbers perspective, if we're looking at weight loss, a good goal would be about 1 pound per week. So you can sort of predict what that could look like. But again, your consistency is going to matter. If we're always like going off the rails on the weekends, then it's going to take a little bit longer. If we're going on vacation and kind of saying, oh, I'll deal with it on Monday, it's going to take a little bit longer. But 1 pound is also a nice goal to work towards, because you don't want to overshoot either. If you're overshooting that goal and you're like, oh, well, I can do it faster, I can do it in half the amount of time, that will start to make the wheels fall off because the restrictions are too big. So that gives you a nice little framework to follow.
Yeah. And something we always say in training too is, ready and willing, right? So like until the individual is ready and willing to make these changes, there's no way these changes are going to happen. Do you see certain lifestyle what do I want to even say? Like lifestyle habits that people have that continuously put them back into this like negative feedback loop when it comes to nutrition? What are some of the things that we should be fixing like pretty immediately?
So first of all, I'm really glad you said about ready, willing, and I'll add able on there because those are
Mm.
the three things. And I might go a little bit off, but hopefully I'll come back to your question. Because one of the reasons most goals fail is because they're not picking the right goal. And it has a lot to do with being ready, willing, and able. It's fine to pick a muscle building goal or a goal to, do a bazillion pull-ups or, muscle building, strength, weight loss, whatever. But if you're not picking the right goal and you're not ready to do it, most people are ready because they're like already thinking about it. Able, most people are able, but able can be like, am I physically capable? Do I have the resources to do it? But willing is always the one. And if someone's not willing to do the behavior steps to get to the outcome, the goal has already failed before you even started. So I'm not sure the original question completely, but one of the things that people need to fix is making sure that they're picking the right goal for them. And I'm happy to talk more about, behavior and outcome goals if you want. But also getting out of the all or nothing mindset is where people fail all the time. It's like, I'm all in, I slip up a little, and then I'm all out. And that is the thing that people need to get rid of, the idea of perfection when it comes to nutrition, and work on good enough is good. That's a good place to be. It's good enough. Keep going and not let, something like a slip up take you completely off the rails. So yeah, working through that all or nothing mindset. So many people have it.
And, while we're talking about weight loss specifically for adults, I always find there's a similarity between athletes looking to increase their performance and what they try and do, and adults trying to lose weight and what they're willing to do. And a good example is if I want to get better at running a 40, the athlete will do so many things other than just running 40s, right?
Yeah.
If an adult is losing weight or wanting to lose weight, they will do so many other things outside of seeking a coach and really nailing down those core factors. How do you start educating that client when you start working with them to really nail down what the main thing is and keeping it the main thing?
Yeah, you're totally right. People get, what I say, lost in the weeds. They start focusing on the things that only matter after you have that foundation down. And maybe they will never even matter. Some of them, like, one that comes to mind is like the supplements. It's kind of like people want to go right to supplements, right? But like they haven't even gotten a daily routine down. So that is, for me, is what I call focusing on the big rocks. And we talk about what are the things that move the needle, no matter what the goal is, that are going to move the needle. Those are the things that we need to focus on. And then identify what are these accessory things that are getting us lost in the weeds. And again, there's a lot of noise. So we have to put those things inside, table them, and encourage people to resist the urge to have shiny object syndrome, where they're like, ooh, this, ooh, that sounds good. This athlete's doing that. I'm going to do that. Or this person's eating this and I'm going to do that, and just really focus on those big rocks and lock those in.
Yeah, there's a guy in our space on social media who talks about it as the woman in the red dress. It's like a recall from the Matrix, right?
Okay.
Where if you've seen the movie, years ago,
Yeah,
but
years
basically
ago.
he's walking down and seeing all the normal people, and a woman in the red dress walks by and he stops and doesn't pay attention to anything else that his mentor is teaching him. And then he turns around and the woman in the red dress is one of the agents who is looking to kill him, right? And so that's we look at it that way too. Like, don't look at the new shiny thing or the woman in the red dress, because every moment on social media, you pull up Instagram right now, I bet one of my top 3 posts that come up are going to be some big nutrition hack
Yeah.
that will change your life, right? But that's not one of those big rocks. That's not sleep and consistency and training and all of those things. And it's really hard to keep focused when all those things are going on. So how do you help somebody who has that issue, right? Where they get on a routine and 3 or 4 days they feel good, but then all of a sudden they see this supplement. Oh, if you start supplementing vitamin D, then it will change your life like this. Or if you start eating this style, it will change your life like this. How do we keep people kind of on that path
Yeah, that's a great question.
who do that?
Yeah. So one of them from the beginning is there has to be trust between the coach and the client. You can't do these things without building trust. And that comes with a little bit of time and discussion and getting to know each other. That has to be the foundation of a good coaching client relationship. But then from there, you actually mentioned something, I don't even know if you realized it, in this hypothetical situation, you said the client says they're feeling good, but they see this other thing. So those are little coaching cues that I find and I pull on, like, hey, you're feeling really good right now, right? Because of these things you've done. What would be good about abandoning this plan and doing something else? What would be bad about abandoning this plan and doing something else? And kind of they start to come to this on their own, where they're like, actually, it wouldn't be good if I changed things right now. And they find that on their own. And that's part of it, is pulling it out of them and not just telling them. Like that's like me as a parent telling my daughter, like, no, don't do that. Of course, she's going to want to do it more, and not have like a good reason why, but help them to understand, like, you're feeling really good right now. Why would you want to change that? What about that appeals to you about changing it at this point? So having those conversations is part of the art, right, of coaching and getting that point across.
I think if you pay attention to your own nutrition with the right lens long enough, you start to feel like things just start clicking. It's on autopilot. You are very hyper aware of, I ate this and I had this reaction to it. And I've noticed that with myself, with whether that's a certain beer that I might have on the weekends, is like, well, I reacted negatively to that. I might be allergic to it. Let's not do that again. Or even foods. I had a certain food and I just felt really slow. So it's like, let's avoid that. When did you start getting to that point where you were on autopilot and you had a lot of confidence with your routines? And then what did you learn from that to be able to give and pass to your clients?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the beer the beer that you mentioned, that might be age. You might not be allergic. That just might be getting older. And when you wake up the next day, it's not as fun.
No, specifically, I'm allergic to the new Christmas ales since they switched the brewer over. So I just literally can't have even half of one of those. And I'll just
Neither
get
can
really,
I, but
really stuffy.
for other reasons. Those are strong. They're wicked.
Yeah.
So, everybody wants to have their nutrition flow naturally. Nobody wants to obsess and keep thinking about, what do I eat? How does this happen? Is this the right amount of calories and protein and macros and all the things? We're busy people, right? And making more decisions during the day is tough. And we eat several times a day, so we have to make these decisions all the time. So autopilot is what people desire, right? They just want to make it natural when they go out to dinner and all these things. But it's important to remember that when you don't have an original foundation, however you grew up, your home environment, that's what you were taught. And it's like learning any other skill. So when I grew up, it was, peak 90s, heroin chic, super skinny, Kate Moss, like that real thin look. And that was what we all did. That's what we were all digesting from magazines. There was no foundation there. Then you go to college for me, and it was just like the complete opposite. It was like having no foundation. I had no idea what I was doing to my body, right? It was just kind of all over the place. Luckily for me, I did go down the healthcare route. So I had some exposure to what was, probably more of a balanced lifestyle. But regardless of what you were taught in college or through the years, it's finding the path, like we talked about, pick something, focus on it, and get the reps in. You have to practice it. You have to be willing to make this skill turn into something that becomes natural, just like anything. I mean, you guys could probably pick anything, riding a bike comes to mind real quick, but you're not going to be great at it first. And having that patience and practice over and over and over again. And then it doesn't just happen. You can't just flip the light switch, get a meal plan or a blueprint or a training plan, and it doesn't just happen. You have to be ready to put in that time to get to that point. And that's how it was for me too.
I think about a year ago, James and I started talking on the podcast and talking to professionals in the world of skill acquisition, right? And the more that I kind of think about that and meditate on those things, I feel like everything comes down to skill acquisition, and even nutrition, right? So you had mentioned, like, James uses the analogy, if I want to learn how to play piano, right? I can't just play once a week and learn how to play piano. I struggle with the same thing. I've been trying to teach myself how to play guitar for like 15 years. And I know the same 3 chords because I only play once every 6 months, So what are some of those things when it comes to acquiring the skill of nutrition? Again, you mentioned the big rocks earlier. What are some of those for everybody who has no skill set and no real solid knowledge? What are some of the things that would help them? And quick story from kind of my experience. I remember when I was in group fitness, I was, we would do those challenges. We would bring people in 21-day challenges and all this thing. And the goal wasn't for them to succeed in 21 days. The goal was for them to start a habit that they feel comfortable with. And then that's how, you've basically won, right? Is that, okay, I've committed 21 days to this habit. Now I feel a little better and I have a base of nutrition. But I had a conversation with a girl who said she didn't feel very good during one of the workouts. And I said, well, what'd you eat? And she said, well, I didn't have a ton of calories, but I was hungry. So I had 2 pieces of wheat bread. And she was like, but it's wheat, right? So it was good. And I said, what else did you eat? And she's like, well, that's all I've had all day. And I think it was, she was very skinny, very frail, no real muscle mass. And so I could tell there she had really no idea of where to start and what these big rocks are. So for somebody who has no real idea about what we should be doing for nutrition, right? Let's say wakes up, has cereal because it's breakfast, right? Goes out to lunch with their company, and then gets a salad because it's a salad, and then goes home at dinner and then microwaves a meal for dinner, reheats dinner and eats that. Like, no real base, no real idea, just going through the motions. Where can we start those people off?
Yeah. So there's 2 ways I would attack this. One is from, here's something, take action on, you can do right now, which I'm going to tell you. And then I would also take it from the individual, is what are their personal obstacles? So I know everyone wants like the juicy, like, just tell me what to do thing. So I'm going to give you that first. If you have no idea where to start, this is what I want you to do. You're going to focus on your plate setup at every meal. And you're going to aim to have half of your plate filled with vegetables and some fruit, a quarter of your plate with a lean protein, and then that other quarter of your plate is some extra carbohydrates and fats. That's it. Do that every meal. And then if you need a snack, just do a smaller version of that, or aim for your protein and a fiber source, like a piece of fruit. If you can do that, you're going to be sure that you're eating 4 meals that have balance all throughout. Now, is that perfect for every athlete? No, they might need some more carbohydrates here and there. Is it perfect for every person? No, but it's a nice base to start with and a habit to get into. Then from the perspective of the individual, things that I actually start with is, what is your biggest obstacle? We start with the obstacle first, because everyone is different. I could say, oh, do this, do that, do this. But if it doesn't resonate with them, it's not their problem, it's never going to have any weight to it. There's no gravity to that goal. So something that would be an obstacle would be like, I don't know how to cook and I don't like cooking. So then we would start focusing on cooking strategies, basic recipes to follow. Someone else might say, I struggle when I go out to eat. I don't know what to order. Then we would talk about how to go through a menu or plan ahead. Some people might travel a lot and not know how to navigate their nutrition when they're on the road. Then we would take that approach. So that's where nutrition gets custom, personalized, individualized, right? It's not about what your macros are. Those are easy. Anyone can find a calculator, right? It's learning what their specific roadblock is, how to overcome it. So hopefully that answers your question. So something to take action on today, and then also kind of how I work with clients on their personal needs.
And then do you suggest people track that? Do they follow it in an app? Do they write it down on a sheet of paper? Do they track it, or do you just want them to be kind of intuitive about those things?
Well, here comes that. It depends, right? Again, it depends on the person. Some people absolutely cannot stand tracking. It might stress them out or bring up an old disordered eating issue. For other people, that accountability, that style is so important. I do feel like if you have a healthy relationship with eating and with food, people should absolutely track in the beginning, because it is an accountability level that most people aren't even aware that what they're eating and what they're picking and how it's impacting their day. So yes, I'm a big fan of using a nutrition tracker for even just 2 weeks. Just include the weekend, be honest, and it's just going to give you a snapshot of, you know, what does your daily habit look like, and how does that impact you. Plus, then you have data. Data is always great. I'm a science person, so data is awesome. When you have data, you can manipulate and understand and make adjustments from there.
Yeah, we had the beginning of the year, we had everybody on our staff track a month of what they were eating. And it wasn't because our coaches had weight loss or weight gain goals. It was just to give them a good idea of, when we have those conversations with individuals, you can say then with a little more confidence what things, you know, the amount of calories in certain foods, you know, like about how many calories they can eat throughout a day, and feel pretty good about that. And it was pretty interesting, because I have tracked before. When I was younger, I had tracked, and then I had gone a couple years, and I'm more like you had mentioned, autopilot, right? I eat the same thing, but it drives my wife nuts. I could eat the same. I've been eating the same breakfast, I think, for 15 years. I mean,
That's great.
and I wake up and I'm so excited to have that meal still, even though I've been eating it for a long time. But I know everybody's not like that, and people need some things to be different. They need some variation. So I think that is a good thing for people to track, even if it's not based on very specific weight loss goals. I think it's a good thing. Like you mentioned, 2 weeks to a month, just to get a good idea of what they're putting in their body.
Yeah. And from, you know, I know we talk here in this space right now, we're talking about weight loss a lot because I do work with a lot of adults, but from other perspectives, right? Like muscle building, a lot of people are way under on their protein or even carbohydrates, because those are supportive of muscle building as well. When we're talking about athlete performance, we also want to make sure those are up. So you may end up finding that you're low on things that you could have more of. You know, maybe you're hungry because your fiber is really low. Well, you can take that up and feel better, feel more satiated. So it's also about, what else can I add? And I like to come at nutrition from that perspective as well, not always taking away, because it doesn't feel good. No one likes things taken away from them, especially if they like pizza and cheesecake. But how can we add to do better and to make our bodies feel better? So tracking is also good for that purpose too. And same with measuring food when you're weighing it. I don't think people should do it forever. I don't necessarily think that's a great relationship with eating and food, but weigh your food on a scale, measure it out. Do you have a full serving of protein, or did you cut yourself short? You know, and there's another way to approach it there too.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. When people use, you know, let's say a tablespoon, right? Or they use like those certain types of measurements, it's very easy to be off. And I recognize that too, because when we tracked, I bought a scale, and it's way different from when you scoop peanut butter, for example, onto a tablespoon, and then you put it on the you know, weighing device. Like there's a big difference there. So we suggest tracking for a short amount of time, right? We suggest kind of doing similar things to get up. And I'm kind of saying this to try to wrap up the weight loss talk a little bit. So, you know, again, a couple of those big things. You obviously want to have a good relationship with food. And then I guess the other thing we'll hit on is, you know, holidays come up. July 4th is coming up. You'll hear people who won't have a couple of seltzers, who won't have the burger, or who won't have the bratwurst because it's July 4th. But you don't want that. You don't want to live that life either. Right. So what's the conversation when it comes to, either cheat meals or cheat days? Because people are interested in hearing about that kind of stuff
Yeah.
too.
So first, holidays are not the time to like try and get yourself together.
Yeah.
Like most people are like, they panic around holidays because they know that there's going to be a lot more food and there's going to be a lot more drinking and opportunities for that. And they're all of a sudden, they're really nervous. Like, how do I control this holiday? But it's like the work needs to be done at other times. And if you're locking it in, I like to use the 80-20, 80% of the time. Some people need it 90% of the time. You have some wiggle room on those holidays. So in those situations, if you're doing your consistency, you're locked in, then you have that wiggle room and you just think, I'm just going to maintain, I'm going to lean into my good foundation habits. I don't think anyone should ever abandon them and just go totally insane if they still want to make, forward progress. But it's not the time to try to fix everything. But with that being said, some people are still like, well, I want to go in and do a good job, right? I want to try to stay close to it, still enjoy myself. So then I would say to them, what does that look like for you? What would it look like if you were successful? So getting their idea of success. And for a lot of people, it's like, well, I want to have a few drinks. I might have a dessert, but I don't want to overdo it, right? So then we talk about, well, what would you be willing to do? Would you be willing to go from 10 drinks to 5? And they might say, oh, I don't know. That's a lot. It's a big cut. Okay, well, what number would feel good to you? Well, I think I might have like 6 or 7 this weekend, So finding what they're also willing to do from that perspective. But I would say move into maintenance mode during the holidays, focus your time all of the other days of the week. But there's little strategies. I don't know. Do you guys want a few more? Here we go. Like, don't go into the party super hungry, especially if it's a buffet style, right? Most people have potlucks. Have some protein before you go, so you're not like ravenous, because what tends to happen is you're not always grabbing a plate of food. You're kind of like picking at this and then picking at that and picking at this. And if you're hungry, you're never really gonna get satiated with those types of picnic foods, right? So don't go in super hungry. Have a little protein before you go. One I kind of mentioned is, if you are going to have something, then make sure it's an actual plate. And then you can refer back to that plate method that I just talked about. Half fruits and vegetables, quarter protein, quarter of other things. Make it a meal and then step away from the buffet. You can do basic things with alcohol, like alternating, having a water between, and just slow yourself down a little bit. Position yourself away from the food. If you're standing close to it, you're going to be more inclined to want to eat it. Bring something to the party that that is on track. I find that, fruits and vegetables, they're sometimes there, but they're sometimes a little bit lower. Bring something. Be the person that's proactive. Look for the thing that, you want to be proactive and take control of what you can control, right? People are like, oh, I'm not in control of what's happening at the party, but you are. You actually have a lot of things. You have one, you can bring something, ask the host. Your eating pace. If you slow down, you're going to be more in tune with your hunger cues and your fullness cues. So you're not more likely to just overdo it. Your portions. This kind of goes along with the eating speed. You can, check in with yourself. Take a pause. Do I need a second serving? Do I need a third serving? Do I need a fourth dessert? These are things that are in your control. Prioritizing protein, make sure it's on your plate. Prioritize vegetables, make sure it's on your plate. That's all in your control. It's 5 things right there, if not more, that we just talked about. So looking for those things when you're in those environments.
Yeah, I like the idea, like, be the guy who brings the veggie plate.
Yeah.
Right. So CT brought cauliflower and broccoli again. Like this guy, that's a good thought.
It's kind of actually a joke with us, like, oh, the Sabins are bringing the vegetables again. Like, we also know that we're going to eat a lot of them. So then we don't feel bad when there's only a little bit and we're like crushing them, because we want them. And so we're like, well, we'll just double down and bring them all.
Yeah, that's a good move. So let's use that to transition into performance a little bit, right? So you had mentioned, a lot of times in weight loss, it comes to these certain factors. You just see, some of those like super easily palatable foods, those high fat, high sugar, high carb foods are very easy to eat. That's how they make them. And sometimes that's what people eat a lot of to, to actually continue to gain weight. And so cutting that stuff out will be beneficial. But when it comes to performance, a lot of times, and what I've seen is just what you're saying, people will undereat protein, and that's huge for when it comes to muscle building and performance. Also, carbohydrates is another good one to focus on. But when it came to all of our coaches tracking their food, I saw that it was pretty hard. I thought I was getting, I aim for body weight and protein, so I aim anywhere between like 210 and 220. I had to be really intentional. I mean, like really intentional. Right before I went to bed, I'm 50 grams short of protein, so I had to drink a protein shake. Without tracking that stuff, I would have had no idea.
Yeah.
So let's shift to performance a little bit. What should we be focusing on? What should be the big rocks when it comes to athletes and parents wanting to perform better?
Yeah. So this may possibly surprise you. So you hit on protein, you hit on carbohydrates, and then there's a little bit of timing around that when you're talking about time to, like, you have a game time or a workout, things like that. But one thing that most athletes are missing, especially young athletes, because they're in school all day, is hydrate, 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 hydrate. Master this skill. There was a study done. It's a little bit older now. It's probably 2018, but maybe there's an updated one. 50% of young athletes were going into their practices underhydrated. In other words, they're dehydrated going into practice. And people are like, oh, okay, well, I bring a water bottle and all this stuff. But when you're going in that way and you're at, like, say, a 1 to 2% dehydration rate, your performance and your cognition are already suffering. So it's not just about the food that we put in our body, but it's the way we're hydrating ourselves. And you can actually bonk because of hydration before the food portion of things. So I would be teaching young athletes especially, but even adults may not even know this. Learn what the color of your urine looks like. We talk about funny things as kids. My girls are learning about, puberty and all these things, but this is stuff, you have to understand your body, especially if you want to be an athlete for a long time. So, looking for that pale yellow to clear. Are you getting that all day long? You should be starting the morning with some hydration right away. Now, I'd be curious if they redid this study, because most kids are walking around with Stanleys now. So maybe they're not as underhydrated as they used to be, but getting that hydration down is going to be something that kids need to focus on.
Yeah, and even carrying it around isn't going to hydrate you. You actually have to go through it and you have to drink a couple. Because I've seen that too, right? Where somebody has a Stanley, but it's full all day and they haven't made any progress. Do you talk at all about electrolytes, like putting salt in the water, anything like that? You've seen any benefits from that?
So for the most part, athletes, water is going to get you where you need to go. But if you are sweating a lot, or you have an extra long practice or an extra long game or back-to-back games, then you might want to consider something like a sports drink. And then there's kind of two types of sports drinks. I'm going to use Gatorade. I hope it's okay that I'm saying Gatorade on here or whatever. But, they have, and a lot of brands have these, but there's the regular Gatorade, like the full test, carbohydrates, electrolytes, sodium, all the things. And then there's Gatorade Zero, which is zero, I think it's zero sugar, zero carbs. These are two different things as well. When you're in need of just replenishing from sweating, so then you want to look for your electrolytes from a Gatorade Zero. So that would be like more of a shorter workout, but you're sweating a lot on that day. And then you have your regular Gatorade, which has carbohydrates as well as the electrolytes. And that's going to be for someone that has a long practice or back-to-back games, because you're getting fuel from those carbohydrates. So that's going to give you food, like eating food, but not everyone can eat food in between, because your GI system changes a lot when you're working out with intensity. So then you would want to lean into that type of I call it the full test. But day to day, kids should not be drinking that full test, because you don't need it. You get it from your food. So water, and then maybe an electrolyte drink. And if you need extra fuel from carbohydrates, you can pop those in there too.
Yeah, you brought up a good point too about, and we joked a little bit about sports specificity early on, but you'll have athletes play 3 or 4 soccer games on a Saturday and they go sleep at a hotel and
Yep.
they'll get crummy sleep because of it. And they're with all their friends and they'll go play 3 or 4 games on the next day. What should parents be doing to prepare their athletes to set them up for success when it comes to nutrition and hydration on weekends like that?
Yeah. Got to pack your own stuff. Do not rely on those tournament facilities because it's just not great food. And it's also food that your athlete might not be used to be eating. So it could really disturb their stomach. So you want to start with a game plan. What do your kids like? What are some fast carbs that they're going to be able to eat? So for example, my daughter, when she has early games, she just cannot get food in her system because it's too early for her. But she needs fuel. So we will use the full test Gatorade on that because of the carbohydrates. But then we're also going to be looking at fast carbohydrates, like the things that are small in her stomach but are robust, like Rice Krispie treats, some pretzels, because there's a little bit of salt on that. Then you want to start to think about your time frame. Like, when do you have a gap where you can eat an actual meal, and what is going to be in that meal? What are the proteins that you like? A lot of it comes down to what does your kid like and what are they comfortable eating? And then planning that menu out, packing it, making sure you have a mini fridge in that hotel. If you don't, find a local grocery store. How's that going to look for you? But you have to go in fully prepared. And that's true for any nutrition. You have to be prepared going into your week. And you can't just leave it up to like, I hope it'll be right. I hope there's going to be good food there. So it's really about the planning, finding out what the kid likes to eat and what they're comfortable eating. It's going to look a little bit different for everybody. But carbs are going to be important too. So make sure you get those in.
From what sources? Fruit, veggies,
So it depends when you're
Pop-Tarts?
eating. Yeah. I know this can be a little uncomfortable for some people to hear, but fruits and veggies can be hard on the stomach because you have a lot of fiber, right? So if you're going like right into a game in the morning, you need things that are less fibrous, and that is going to be some of your quote unquote lower quality foods. But when you're talking about performance, you sometimes have to make these trade-offs, right? Doesn't mean they should be eating them all the time. You're going to be perfectly healthy if you have them some of the time, but fruits and vegetables before a big workout or game could be hard on the stomach. So you want those, like I said, like a cracker or pretzels, things that are very easy to digest, cereal, things like that.
Nice. Are there, I know we've kind of hit on them, but I'm trying to give people takeaways that they
Yeah.
can say, okay, I'm not doing this. I'm doing this. Right. I'm not doing this. I need to start doing this. Right. So when it comes to performance, a couple of those big rocks everybody should have in their bag when they're on the way to a tournament. Right. You mentioned some of these snacks, but when it comes to actual meals, do we want athletes to be eating? So, and again, this is from the idea of, you're going to play these games and you're going to go out to dinner, probably get like pizza as a team or something like that. Right.
Yeah.
And then that's not going to set you up for the best case scenario the next day. But if it could be perfect, right? If you could set everything up perfectly, right? And you have that kind of like pregame, the pretzels or like the easy snacks, something that your athlete is used to, and it's easy on their digestive tract. And then, you've got another day or two where you have to then go out and either make food or go out to dinner as a team. What are some of the things that parents should be looking for when they've got a little more time between the games to help like sleep and recovery?
Yeah, great question. And this is going to be coming back to like where you said, like fruits and vegetables. At that point, when you have more time, you're doing that post-game meal. You want to go back to that basic plate that we've talked about. It's going to keep coming up. And also, real quick before I forget, you can hop online right now and Google athlete plate, and it's going to show you 3 examples of plates to use: hard training day, easy day, moderate day. Learn those, because
Nice.
after your event, that's when you want to get back to that plating style. that's when you're going to have your fruits and vegetables and fiber again. That's when you're going to go back to that lean protein and those healthy carbohydrates again. So then we're talking more of like the chickens, the lean turkeys, lean beef, healthy fats. Not a lot of kids are probably chomping down on avocados, but if we can try to encourage those types of things over, just having pizza or chicken wings all the time. Not that they're bad, not that there isn't a place for it. But if you're talking like optimal, if I could get every kid or a young athlete or just any athlete in general to eat optimally, it would be getting that plating down with those whole foods.
Awesome.
And I think I like that approach a lot from a sense of it's teaching habits that will help them carry past their time as an athlete. And we see a lot of like, well, I can get away with it because of, instead of, oh, I'm intentionally having more carbohydrates that are easily digestible before a hard training session or before a game because I need it, versus, oh, well, I can just go get pizza because I can get away with it after a game because I have another high energy day tomorrow, which then when all of the training and all of the games and all of that goes away, we still have the habit of, oh, well, I can just go get pizza. Or, we want to replace that with something that's foundational that they can look at that plate and it's not going to be much different as they're an adult or no longer an athlete in college. And I think that's something that we'd see, over the years of being in the field for 10 years. Certain athletes just have a harder time dealing with the challenges of day-to-day life and nutrition post athletics. How have you worked with parents in the past that have kind of helped set that foundation up for kids to have success now as an athlete, but really developing? Because, as children, we learn from our parents.
100%.
What are some of those things that you've done to help parents help their kids?
Yeah. So you make a really good point about the young athlete that turns into an adult and the sport goes away, but the behavior doesn't change, right? And those are people that I work with often where they're like, oh, I used to be a college athlete and I was in such great shape and all this stuff. And it's what didn't change with that eating pattern. So you're totally right. You got to set that up young. When it comes to parents helping their kids build that foundation, a lot of it is giving them autonomy, right? Again, I think I mentioned this before. Like if I tell my daughter to do something, she's probably not going to want to do it. But if it comes from her, she's more likely to do it, right? If it's her idea. So it's about including kids in the meal planning during the week. What do you like to eat? What do you want to have at dinner? And set some guidelines. We need to have color in our meal. You can pick any color of the rainbow. What color is it? All right, let's make that a vegetable. What vegetable do you like in that color? These are just like kind of like gamifying things too, right? And making it fun, but giving kids the choice so they know how to make the decisions. Now, like I said, there has to be guidelines because they'll be like, pizza, chicken fingers, all those things. But you're like, no, we're going to have some guidelines. We're going to have a vegetable on it. But what do you want it to be? Then there's also the reality of take your kids to the grocery store, teach them what it's like. They don't have to go every week, but have them walk around with you, picking it out. What is this experience like? How do I identify this vegetable that I just picked? What does a zucchini even look like? So giving them a part in it. And whether your kid's an athlete or not, these are the things that I encourage parents to do no matter what. Because if they start to learn how to make eggs at 7, 8 years old, they're going to know how to make eggs when they go to college, and then they know how to make that in adulthood, and then they can experience and experiment and grow with that. So not always just having it for them. And I get it. I'm a parent. I want to help my kids as much as possible, just make their life super easy. But they need to be an active participant in that because they're going to eat meals every day, multiple times a day for the rest of their life. And if someone's doing it for them all the time and not giving them a little bit of that responsibility, they're going to struggle as they get older.
Yeah, it's a great point. One of the things that makes me frustrated, upset, sad, I mean, probably sad the most is when, you're at a grocery store and you're shopping and you see an overweight parent with an overweight child and just the stuff that they're dumping into their, their grocery bag or their cart. I get so frustrated because you want to shake them and be like, this is, you know, this is your fault. Like, you are doing this to your child and not setting them up to, you know, be successful or be healthy or be fit. How important, Natalie, is it that parents walk the walk when it comes to this on the nutrition side?
I mean, I think we've touched on a few times. It's like, you know, we model the behaviors for our kids, whether it's food, the way we respond in anger, the way we treat other people. We are their models. That's all that they have for a certain point, right? Up to a certain age. Then they start to experience things from their friends and other things. When it comes to the topic though of obesity and overweightness, I do believe that it is more than just uh, like, this is your fault, this is your
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. There are other factors, right? We have to remember that that person maybe did not have that education growing up, that exposure, that experience. You know, there are genetic factors and there are environmental factors, and there are things like food insecurity that we have to remember. Like, you know, food is expensive. So it's not always the easiest. Plus, someone that has obesity, um, they have struggles from a physiological standpoint on a cellular level, because the more fat cells we have, the more hunger hormones are released. So now they're fighting biology on top of it. You know, of course, we want to try to prevent obesity from the beginning, but just knowing that it's not always as easy to turn that ship around once you have it. But to your point, yes, it has to start from the parents being good role models. And if they are not sure what that looks like, then that's their time to be proactive in their life and say, I need some help here. How can I make that transformation for myself? Not necessarily a physical transformation, but changes to my diet to help my family, right?
Yeah.
It's like we want to take them to the doctor and keep them healthy. And we want to get them into the best club program because we want them to be successful. Make nutrition your business at home.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. A couple more things for Natalie, and we'll let you go. So if I had two things in mind now, I'm trying to work back through this, and
Isn't
because
that
again,
fun
that
when
was
that
such a great
happens?
point.
They're just like,
I tend to do that. I tend to look at individuals and get frustrated and want to help them and say, just try this. But you're right. There are so many other factors. There are so many other factors, and I should not have a big enough ego that says that, you know, I know the answers to all the things. So thank you for saying that and making that clear, that it's not as easy for everybody.
there's nothing, I mean, what you're saying and experiencing is so common, because I think it's more understood now than it was even, you know, a few years ago. I don't think there's anything to apologize for. I think
Yeah.
it's just, it's a new conversation to be had. That's where I'm at with that.
Yes. Yeah. Great point. Okay. I got it. So we had talked about earlier, all this stuff on social media, all these external factors telling us what to do and add this and don't do this and all of these things. Is there something you think that we are missing in the nutrition space that might help more people than, you know, just saying, do this, don't do this, eat these foods, don't eat these foods? Is there something maybe like, as far as learning about, you had mentioned like learning about the individual, right?
Mhm.
Is that maybe something that we're completely missing in the nutrition space when it comes to social media? And let me know if that question makes sense.
I think it makes sense. You're seeing like specifically focusing on social media, and why is there so much chaos in it?
And there's so much information,
Yeah.
right? And I think there's something that we've got to be missing
Mhm.
for people to really be able to attach to. And it might be, and I like again what you said earlier, where like you really need to, you said you need to one of your goals is to understand the people, how
Yep.
they are as human beings before we can ever even get them going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And maybe that's it. Maybe you've already answered the question of like, that is what's missing in the nutrition space, is
Mhm.
trying to say, hey, this is a general template. This is
Yeah.
general guidelines. You need to follow this without understanding the individual.
I think when it comes to social media and the nutrition space, there are people that are doing it really well. And that's because they are focused on the person, and they're not focused on selling a product. And
Yeah.
that's actually the problem. It's there's no way to revamp what's happening on social media because it is a way for people to make money. What we need to change, though, is how we educate people who are digesting the social media and what to look for. That's where it needs to happen. We can't control what other people are going to put out there. We can only control what we understand and what to look for. And there's kind of like, there's few things that I say, you know, if someone is promising a quick fix, run away, right?
Great point.
Get out of there. If they are saying that there is dire danger, dire warnings for a single ingredient or a single food group, run away, right?
Yeah.
Because no one thing is bad, right? Unless you're just like drinking gasoline, then that would be common sense. And I hope you've learned that already. You know, if they're saying that there's this big problem with your body, there's no real good way to test it, but if you buy my thing, I'm going to fix that problem for you. Head to the door as soon as possible. And then also, this is a little bit harder to identify, and it's a little bit more of a skill building, is understanding who's cherry picking research. That's really hard because unless you've taken a statistics class or you read research regularly, you almost can't tell. You kind of take people at their word. So in that case, I would say learn to follow people that are doing it with the best intentions and kind of stay away, or at least, you know, go into it with guilty until proven innocent, right? When you hear something about nutrition, kind of the opposite, right? Be a skeptic, find out, keep looking. And that's going to be better. So for me, it's not how do we fix the social media problem. It's how do we learn to better digest what we're getting from it.
Yes. Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for when we.
Okay. I'm glad.
So,
I want to make sure. I'm like,
last question to wrap this up. And this is a Tim Ferriss thing. And I really like this. And I think this fits our conversation perfectly. And he talks about, you know, if you were to put something on a billboard for people to see, you know, and they drive by and millions of people see it every day. What would you put on your billboard? Like one piece of nutrition advice that you think could be super helpful for everybody to understand?
Oh, I like that. I didn't even realize he asked that question, but I like that.
Yeah.
So this kind of goes back, like, so my daughter, she's 8. One of my daughters she's 8. She's super into theater, and she takes acting classes, and she did an improv class, and her coach, he's like, all things lead back to improv. And she loves improv. She's hilarious. She's funny. For nutrition on the billboard, it would say all things lead back to sleep.
Yeah.
And I know that's mind blowing because everyone's like, well, what's the perfect amount of protein? What's the perfect amount of this? Hydration, all this stuff. It's sleep, you guys. It is absolutely sleep. When we're talking about weight loss, if we're not sleeping well, our hunger hormones are going to rev us up all day long, and we're going to be searching for food because our brain is like, your energy is low, you need food. We get energy from food. If you're talking about muscle building, sleep is when your growth hormones are up, you're recovering from those hard gym sessions. It's protein synthesis is happening when you're sleeping. And then just general performance in life, you can feel that the most is if you're not sleeping well, you feel like crap, you're not thinking as well, and it all leads back to sleep.
That's awesome. Exclamation point. If people like this and you know want to know more from you, want to hear more from you, and might want to work from you on a one-on-one, you know, coach client basis, where can people find you?
Well, you guys can go to T3, click on the nutrition tab up there, so you can contact me through there. We can schedule a consultation if you want to. It's totally free. Just chat about it. I do a little bit on Instagram if you're curious a little bit more about some of the podcasts that I put out. It's called Up Your Feed. And what I do is create 5-minute episodes on one specific question, because let's be real, 5 minutes is probably all you want. You just want the good stuff, right to it. I don't mess around. I don't tell you my life story. It's just, here's the answer. Here's how to navigate it. So check that out for some little clips, and also a little bit more you'll learn about my coaching style in there too.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Thanks so much for being on. We covered so many things, from, you know, athletes and performance to weight loss and kind of all things in between, pre and post workout nutrition and all that kind of stuff. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Episode 63 of the Cutoffs and Coffee podcast. Again, if you want any more information from Natalie, follow those. The links, they'll be down in the bio. Follow her Instagram page. Reach out to her. She had mentioned how important it is to get going on your fitness journey or your nutrition journey. If you're not there yet, please find an expert to be able to help you get to that place. It's so much easier. It's so much better to have somebody holding you accountable and to help you through that process. Thank you again for everybody listening to 3 things we ask you to do at the end of every episode. 1, if you're not yet, you need to start practicing gratitude. If you are, please continue practicing gratitude. Number 2, tell the people that you love them. Tell them you love them as many times as you can throughout the day. And number 3, continue to live your life stimulated. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Cutoffs and Coffee.